The night shimmered with money. At the Sterling Foundation's annual gala, chandeliers spilled golden light across a room full of people pretending to like each other. Cameras flashed, violins whispered, and waiters in crisp black uniforms glided between tables like well-trained ghosts. At the center of it all stood Nathan Sterling, the billionaire everyone loved to envy. He looked flawless in his tailored midnight suit, his arm draped around Julia Voss, the glamorous actress the world believed was his fiancée. To the press, they were perfection, a love story polished to a mirror shine. To Nathan, it was business. Julia was under contract. 6 months of smiling, pretending, and wearing a diamond that wasn't real. The deal soothed investors who worried about his image. They didn't want a ruthless bachelor running a multi-billion-dollar energy empire. They wanted stability, a future wife, a story. And so he bought one. Across the ballroom, Clara Hale adjusted her serving tray and took a breath that tasted like nerves and champagne bubbles. She'd worked this event 3 years in a row, always invisible. But tonight, something about the couple on the stage drew her eyes like a magnet. Julia lifted her hand for the photographers. The ring caught the light. Brilliant. Perfect. But not to Clara. Her pulse jumped. She recognized that ring. Same delicate twist in the band. Same twin-leaf engraving curling around the stone. Except it wasn't real gold. It was cheap, plated metal, the kind that flakes after a few months. She knew because her mother once had the same design, bought from a pawn shop years ago when they couldn't afford groceries. It wasn't jewelry. It was survival disguised as beauty. Clara whispered under her breath, "No way." As she moved closer to refill champagne glasses, she caught fragments of conversation. "Smile, darling," Julia murmured through her perfect teeth. "They love a fairy tale." Nathan's voice was colder. "Just remember the script." Clara's stomach twisted. The billionaire's smile was flawless, but his eyes were empty, scanning the room for witnesses, not affection. She'd served every kind of rich man, arrogant, kind, cruel. But this one looked hollow, as if he'd built his empire on silence. The flash of the camera hit again, and the ring glittered, cheap stone, heavy meaning. Behind the champagne tower, 2 older socialites whispered, "Her ring's supposed to be custom Tiffany." "Please, that's cubic zirconia if I've ever seen it." Clara nearly laughed out loud. They didn't know how right they were. A waiter brushed past her. "You good, Hale?" "Yeah," she said quietly, though her hands shook. Just déjà vu. Her mind flashed back to her mother's trembling fingers, holding that same design years ago, saying softly, "It's a promise of better days, baby, even if it's not real." Now here it was again, on a billionaire's fake fiancé, glittering under $1,000 chandelier. Clara's eyes met Nathan's for a fraction of a second. Something sharp flickered there. Recognition. Maybe fear. Then he looked away, as if she were just another nameless server. But she'd seen it, and he'd seen her see it. The music swelled. The cameras kept clicking. The fairy tale played on. Only one person in the entire ballroom knew the perfect ring was a lie. One that would soon unravel everything Nathan Sterling thought he'd buried. And Clara Hale wasn't going to forget that ring. Ever. The gala lights still shimmered in Clara's mind, long after she clocked out. The subway ride home felt like falling down a well lined with neon and exhaustion. Every time the train screeched, her reflection flashed in the window, pale, tired, and still haunted by that ring. Her world couldn't have been further from marble floors and champagne towers. Her stop, Queensborough Plaza, smelled like rain and fried food. She walked the last 3 blocks to her apartment through puddles that reflected the city like broken glass. The building leaned slightly, as if weary from holding up too many lives. Inside, the air carried a faint scent of laundry detergent and hospital disinfectant. "Mom, you awake?" A voice drifted from the small bedroom. "In here, honey." Her mother, Marianne Hale sat propped up by pillows, her oxygen tube glinting in the dim light. Once a lab technician with steady hands, she now spent her days between medical appointments and memories that sometimes slipped away mid-sentence. Clara set down her purse and knelt beside the bed. "You should have called me if you needed anything." Marianne smiled faintly. "You work enough for both of us." "I'm serious, Mom." Clara brushed hair from her mother's forehead. "How's it like a rusty accordion?" Marianne chuckled weakly, then coughed. "But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere yet." Clara tried to smile back, but her chest felt heavy. The hospital bills stacked on the nightstand said otherwise. While she changed the oxygen tank, her eyes caught the glimmer of a silver chain on the bedside table. The small ring dangled from it, 2 tiny leaves engraved into the band, edges worn smooth with years. Clara picked it up carefully. "You still wear this every day?" "Always," Marianne said. "It's the only thing I kept from the old life." "What old life?" Her mother hesitated, gaze flicking to the wall. "Before you were born. I worked for someone. Smart man, big dreams. Things went wrong." She reached for the ring, her fingers trembling. "He gave me this when he said we'd build something great together. Then one morning, he was gone, and so was everything we built." Clara swallowed hard. "Was his name Sterling?" Marianne froze. The hum of the oxygen machine filled the silence. "Why do you ask?" Clara forced a laugh that didn't sound like her own. "Just something I overheard tonight." Her mother's eyes softened, but didn't answer. She simply said, "There are some questions that hurt more than the answers." Clara slipped the ring back into her mother's palm, but her mind was already spinning. Sterling. The name on every newspaper, every stock ticker, every building downtown. It couldn't be coincidence. Later, after her mother fell asleep, Clara sat by the window with her laptop balanced on her knees. She typed Nathan Sterling fiancée ring into the search bar. The screen filled with glossy photos, Nathan and Julia smiling for cameras, headlines praising their perfect love story. The ring sparkled in every shot. Clara zoomed in. The engraving was identical to her mother's. The twin leaves, the same faint scratch near the edge. She whispered to herself, "It's not just similar. It's the same design." Her stomach turned. What were the odds that a billionaire's fiancé wore a cheap replica of her mother's ring? Unless it wasn't a replica. Unless the story her mother never finished wasn't fiction at all. She closed the laptop, her reflection ghosted on the dark screen. "What did you do, Mom?" The radiator hissed in response. Outside, the city glowed, a million windows full of secrets. Clara didn't know it yet, but she had just stepped onto a path that would drag both her and Nathan Sterling back into a past they thought was dead. And the ring would be the key to it all. Morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse windows of Sterling Tower, turning the glass walls gold. Nathan Sterling stood before them, untouched coffee cooling on his desk, watching the city he owned move like a machine. Cars crawled along Fifth Avenue. People hurried, tiny and irrelevant. He admired order, predictability, anything that didn't remind him of the chaos he'd buried 20 years ago. Behind him, the soft click of heels announced his assistant, Megan. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. You have a call with the board in 20 minutes, then the PR team about last night's gala." Nathan didn't turn. "What's the damage?" "They loved Julia," Megan said. "Every magazine is calling you the power couple of the decade." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Good. That's the point." Megan hesitated. "You don't sound thrilled." He finally faced her. "You know how many people I had to convince just to secure the Arcadian merger. They don't care about vision. They care about optics. They want a family man." He picked up a file from his desk and dropped it into his briefcase. "So I bought the illusion." Megan didn't respond. She knew better. Everyone in Sterling Tower did. You didn't ask the boss about his personal life, and you never mentioned the woman from the past. Nathan checked his watch. Julia was late again. Right on cue, the elevator chimed and Julia Voss swept in wearing sunglasses and last night's smile. "Sorry, traffic," she said, though they both knew she came from 2 floors down. "You were supposed to be here an hour ago." "Relax," she said, dropping her purse on the couch. "I'm your fiancée, remember? You can't yell at me in front of people. Not good for the narrative." Nathan exhaled sharply. "The narrative is all that's keeping this company from bleeding billions." Julia smirked. "Then you'd better hope I play my part." She held up her left hand, admiring the ring. "By the way, your prop department nailed it. Almost looks real." Nathan's eyes flicked to the ring. A strange discomfort pricked at him. Something about it looked too familiar. "Almost?" "Well, it's not heavy enough to be real diamond," she teased, "but it photographs war beautifully. That's what matters." He turned away, dismissing the thought. It didn't matter where the designer got the pattern. What mattered was that it fooled everyone. Or so he thought. That afternoon, during the board meeting, the head of PR played footage from the gala. Nathan half listened until the video froze on a single frame, his fiancée's hand extended for photographers. In the corner of the shot stood a waitress, her gaze fixed on the ring, her face pale, frozen mid-breath. "Who's that?" Nathan asked quietly. "Probably staff," PR replied. "Do you want us to crop her out?" He stared at the screen longer than necessary. There was something in the waitress's eyes, recognition, not curiosity, but knowing. It unsettled him. "No, leave it." After the meeting, he shut himself in his office, pulling out the original design files for the ring. They weren't his. The model had been chosen quickly from an old supplier's archive. He scrolled through the metadata and froze when he saw the file's original name. M. Hale, Prototype 01. His chest tightened. He whispered the name out loud, as if testing it against time. Hale. He hadn't spoken that name in 20 years. He pressed his palms against the desk, trying to steady his breath. The past was supposed to be dead, sealed with money and lawyers. But somehow, it had found a way back, through a ring, a face, a moment caught on camera. Nathan glanced again at the paused image of the waitress. Her eyes locked on Julia's hand. He felt a flicker of something he couldn't name. Fear. Maybe guilt. "Find out who she is," he said to no one in particular. Quietly. Outside, the city hummed beneath him, unaware that a single waitress had just shaken the foundation of a billionaire's empire. And Nathan Sterling felt, for the first time in decades, that the truth was coming for him. The next Friday night at the Gilded Swan began like any other. Clinking glasses, the low hum of jazz, and a staff too tired to care about the people they served. Clara tied her apron and tried not to think about the name that had been looping through her head all week. Sterling. Every time she heard it on the news, her stomach twisted tighter. By 8 o'clock, the restaurant buzzed with high-profile guests. Celebrities, politicians, CEOs. Then the door opened, and the air shifted. Nathan Sterling had arrived, with Julia Voss on his arm. Clara's breath caught. Of course he'd come here. This was his favorite high-end hideaway, the place where he sealed mergers and manipulated markets over steak and vintage wine. She hadn't expected him to show up so soon, or for fate to drop him into her section. "Table 12, Hale," the hostess said, handing her the order pad. "VIP." Clara forced a steady smile. "Got it." She approached this table, heart pounding so loud she could feel it in her throat. Nathan looked up as she neared. Their eyes met, briefly, sharply. Recognition flickered there. He didn't know why, but he knew her face. "Good evening," she managed, voice smooth. "Welcome to the Gilded Swan. May I start you with something to drink?" Julia smiled, too wide and too bright. "Champagne. Something expensive. We're celebrating, aren't we, darling?" Nathan nodded, his tone clipped. "Yes. Celebrating." Clara jotted the order, pretending not to notice the tension between them. Julia's laugh sounded rehearsed, like dialogue from a script she didn't believe in. When Clara turned to leave, Julia called after her, "Make sure it's served properly chilled, not lukewarm like last time." "Yes, ma'am," Clara said softly. In the kitchen, she set down the pad, hands trembling. Her co-worker Benny noticed. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." "Maybe I did," she said. When she returned to the table with the champagne, Julia had slipped off the ring to admire it under the candlelight. Clara froze. There it was, closer than ever. The twin-leaf engraving, the tiny scratch on the band. She couldn't stop herself. "That's a beautiful ring," she said, voice careful. Julia grinned. "You think so? It's one of a kind." Nathan's gaze sharpened, but he said nothing. Clara tilted her head. "Funny. My mum has one just like it." The words hung in the air, quiet and deadly. Nathan's hand tightened around his glass. Julia's smile faltered. "Oh? Must be a coincidence." "Maybe," Clara replied, "but it's rare to see the same engraving. 2 leaves, right? Twisting around each other like vines." Julia looked to Nathan for help, but he was staring at Clara now, really staring, as if she'd just peeled back a layer of his soul. The silence stretched. Finally, Julia laughed, too high-pitched. "You must be mistaken, sweetheart. This ring was custom-made." Clara smiled politely. "Of course, my mistake." She set the bottle down, poured their glasses, and walked away with practiced calm. But inside her thoughts were spiraling. He knows. He remembers. Back at the table, Julia whispered sharply. "What was that?" Nathan's jaw clenched. "Nothing. Don't tell me you actually recognize her." "She just looks familiar." Julia leaned in, voice dripping irritation. "Well, whoever she is, she's ruining my appetite. You should control your staff." Nathan didn't answer. He was still watching Clara from across the room. There was something haunting about her. The tilt of her head, the tone of her voice, the way she said, "My mom." He felt the past stirring, clawing at the edges of his carefully built life. Later, as they left, Julia slipped her arm through his. "You're quiet tonight," she said. Nathan's reply was barely a whisper. "Some ghosts don't stay buried." Julia frowned. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. His eyes lingered on Clara, still clearing their table. She looked up once more, meeting his gaze with quiet defiance. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment, the glance, the ring, the unspoken truth had just set fire to everything that came next. Rain hammered the restaurant windows like a warning. The Gilded Swan was packed, yet every sound seemed dulled, as if the storm outside had swallowed the room. Clara carried a tray of espresso cups through the crowd, forcing her face into the calm smile of a professional. Inside, she was unraveling. She'd told herself the moment with Nathan Sterling was nothing, just coincidence, a misunderstanding. But his face, that sharp, silent stare, it had meant something. And that ring, always that ring. At table 12, Julia Voss was in full performance mode, laughing too loudly, touching Nathan's arm every few seconds, her diamond catching the candlelight like a lie begging to be believed. But Nathan wasn't playing along. He sat stiffly, lost in thought, eyes flicking to Clara every time she passed. When she arrived to clear the dessert plates, Julia looked her up and down with that cold kind of amusement wealthy women save for people beneath them. "You again," she said. "You're efficient. I'll give you that." Clara forced a polite smile. "Thank you, ma'am." Julia tilted her head. "You look familiar. Have you worked here long?" 3 years. Julia's smile sharpened. "Then I guess I just have one of those faces that draws attention." Clara didn't rise to the bait. She reached for a half-empty glass, but Julia's ring slipped from her finger, landing on the tablecloth with a soft clink. Both women froze. Clara instinctively reached for it. "Here! Don't touch it!" Julia snapped, grabbing the ring first. Her sudden panic drew stares from the next table. Nathan's voice cut through the tension, low and controlled. "Julia." She turned toward him, eyes wide. "It's fine, I just didn't want it to roll away." Clara straightened, her pulse pounding. "Sorry, sir. I didn't mean—" Nathan looked at her, and the apology caught in her throat. There was no anger in his eyes this time, just recognition. "What's your name?" "Clara. Clara Hale." "Clara." The name hit him like a punch. He covered it well, but Julia didn't miss the flicker of shock. "Do you two know each other?" she demanded. Nathan's jaw tightened. "No. I just like to know the names of the staff." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Of course, sir. Excuse me." She turned away, heart hammering so loud she barely heard Julia's next words. "Strange," Julia muttered, sipping her wine. "She looks familiar." Nathan didn't reply. His mind was already years away, hearing another woman's laugh, another voice saying, "We'll build something beautiful together, Nathan." He pushed the memory down, but it clawed its way back up through the silence. Half an hour later, Julia excused herself to the restroom. Nathan remained at the table, staring into the amber swirl of his drink. When Clara passed again, he spoke quietly. "Miss Hale." She hesitated. "Yes, sir. Your mother. She wouldn't happen to be Marianne Hale, would she?" Her hands went cold. "How do you know that name?" He looked up slowly, guilt flickering behind his calm mask. "I used to know her. A long time ago." Before Clara could speak, Julia's sharp voice sliced through the moment. "Nathan, what's going on here?" She'd returned just in time to see Clara standing too close, eyes wide. "Nothing," Nathan said quickly. "We were talking about the service." But Julia wasn't convinced. Her gaze darted from Clara to Nathan, reading the invisible current between them. "Right. The service." Clara stepped back, voice steady but trembling underneath. "Enjoy your evening, sir." "Ma'am." She left before either could stop her. Nathan leaned back, exhaling. Julia's tone was sugar-coated poison. "Care to explain why the waitress looks like she just saw a ghost?" Nathan's reply was soft, almost to himself. "Maybe she did." Julia's eyes narrowed. "If you're hiding something, Nathan, remember, I'm part of your image now. Don't make me regret it." But he wasn't listening. Across the dining room, Clara disappeared through the swinging kitchen doors. His chest felt hollow. The name Hale echoed in his mind like thunder. Outside, lightning lit the skyline. Inside, a storm of another kind was breaking loose. And for the first time, both of them knew this wasn't over. Clara couldn't sleep that night. The storm had passed, but thunder still rolled inside her chest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face. The flicker of recognition, the quiet guilt when he said her mother's name. He knew her. He really knew her. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to the small storage closet they called an office. Inside were boxes of her mother's old things, medical records, work notes, faded photos. She pulled one labeled Hale Research, 1999. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. She sat on the floor, spreading the papers around her like puzzle pieces. Lab reports, sketches of chemical diagrams, and in the corner of one page, a signature. Marianne Hale, Sterling Industries Research Division. Her breath caught. Sterling Industries. She flipped through the rest. Patent drafts. A project name circled over and over. Phoenix Core. Next to it, in neat capital letters, NS plus MH. NS, she whispered. Nathan Sterling. Her hands shook. The ring, the initials, the matching designs. Her mother's story about building something together. It all connected. The apartment door creaked. Her mother's weak voice floated out. "Clara? What are you doing up?" Clara scrambled to gather the papers. Nothing, Mum. Couldn't sleep. Marianne leaned against the doorway, pale but smiling faintly. You always dig when you can't sleep. Just like me. Clara hesitated, then held up one of the papers. You worked for Sterling Industries, didn't you? The older woman's face stiffened. Where did you find that? In the closet. Mum, what happened back then? Marianne sat down slowly, eyes clouded by memory. That was another lifetime. Tell me, she sighed. I was part of a small team, experimental clean energy. We had an idea that could change everything. Nathan and I were partners. Brilliant, stubborn man. He believed we could change the world. Clara leaned forward. And then? Her mother looked away. And then the company changed him. Investors wanted quick results. He wanted control. I didn't want to sell out. So you left? Marianne's voice trembled. No, I was pushed out. There was an accident, a data breach that wasn't my fault. I was blamed, discredited. Nathan didn't defend me. He said it was out of his hands. Clara felt anger rise in her throat. He ruined you. Her mother gave a sad smile. Maybe, but he didn't start that way. He was kind once. I think losing what we had broke him too. Clara stared at the papers. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because the past doesn't pay the bills, Marianne said softly, and hate eats what little peace you have left. But Clara couldn't let it go. Not after seeing that ring, her mother's design turned into a billionaire's PR prop. The next morning, she stuffed the documents into her bag and caught the early subway downtown. The train rattled, a steady metallic heartbeat. She didn't have a plan, just a question burning too hot to ignore. When she reached Sterling Tower, the security guard stopped her at the marble desk. Appointment? Tell Mr. Sterling that Clara Hale wants to speak with him, she said, steady but trembling. He raised an eyebrow. Do you have ID? Before she could answer, the elevator dinged. Megan, Nathan's assistant, stepped out with the tablet in hand. It's fine, Tom. I'll take her. Clara followed, her heart pounding. The elevator climbed in silence until the doors opened to a breathtaking view of the skyline. Nathan was standing by the window, suit immaculate, expression unreadable. Megan cleared her throat. Mr. Sterling, Miss Hale is here. He turned, eyes locking on Clara. For a moment, the years between them seemed to vanish. You found it, didn't you? He said quietly. Clara set the folder on his desk. I found her work, her name, her signature. You stole everything. Nathan's face tightened. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, she said. You built your empire on my mother's silence. He looked away, voice low. Then maybe it's time you hear the whole truth. Outside, the city gleamed like gold. Inside, two lives built on lies were about to collide. Nathan stood behind his desk like a man preparing for trial. Outside the glass walls, the Manhattan skyline blazed with morning light. Inside, the air felt sharp, thin, heavy with everything unsaid. You think I stole your mother's work, he said quietly. Clara crossed her arms. Didn't you? He looked older up close, tired, maybe even haunted. No. I finished what she started. I protected it. She let out a bitter laugh. Protected it? You took credit. You let her name disappear while you turned her designs into billion-dollar patents. Nathan's jaw tightened. You don't understand how dangerous that project became. Investors wanted to weaponize it. Phoenix Core wasn't just clean energy. It could power an entire city or destroy one. Clara stepped forward. So you erased her instead? I saved her, he said. At least I thought I did. There were threats, pressure. She was accused of espionage. I signed the papers to make it look like she was fired. It was supposed to keep her safe. Her voice broke. You call that safety? She lost everything. Her career, her reputation, her health. He didn't flinch. And I lost her. The silence stretched until it hurt. Clara turned away, blinking back tears. Why now? Why show up at a restaurant with your fake fiancée, wearing a ring she designed? That ring was a mistake, he admitted. My PR manager picked it from an archive file. I didn't recognize it until that night, until you. Her throat tightened. So what happens now? You try to buy my silence, too? Nathan's voice dropped. I'm not here to buy you. I'm here to make this right. Clara scoffed. Right? You can't rewrite 20 years. No, he said. But I can finish what we started. The technology your mother created, it still exists, buried under 100 shell companies. If we bring it to light, it could finally belong to her again. She studied him. Why me? Because she trusted you, he said softly. And because you're the only one left who can prove it was hers. Her pulse pounded. And what's in it for you? He met her eyes. Redemption? The word hung between them like smoke. Clara didn't know if she believed him, but something in his tone made her hesitate. Beneath the arrogance and control, there was regret, raw and real. Before she could answer, the office door swung open. Julia Voss strode in, sunglasses still on, fury blazing beneath the glamour. You have got to be kidding me. Nathan straightened. Julia, not now. Oh, I think now is perfect, she snapped. The tabloids are crawling with stories about us, and you're in here with a waitress? Do you have any idea how this looks? Clara shot her a glare. I'm not here for him. Julia sneered. Then why are you here, looking for a payout? Enough, Nathan said sharply. Julia, leave. But Julia didn't move. You told me I was part of the story, that we'd be unstoppable, and now I find out this. She waved a manicured hand at Clara. Is what's really going on? Clara grabbed her folder from the desk. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm not part of his story. She turned to leave, but Nathan's voice stopped her. Clara, wait. She hesitated at the door. He looked at her with something like desperation. Let me prove I'm telling the truth. Give me 1 day. 1 day for what? To show you what your mother built, and what they tried to destroy. Julia laughed. You can't be serious. Nathan didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on Clara. After a long, silent moment, Clara said, 1 day. That's all you get. Then she was gone, the elevator doors closing behind her. Julia turned to Nathan, voice low and venomous. You're going to regret this. Nathan stared at the skyline. I already do. Outside, far below, Clara stepped into the bright morning, unaware that she'd just agreed to walk straight into the storm her mother once barely escaped. Clara showed up the next morning expecting to be turned away by security. Instead, Megan, Nathan's assistant, was waiting for her in the lobby, a sleek tablet in hand and a look that suggested she already knew too much. Mr. Sterling said to take you to the archives, she said. Clara followed her through a maze of glass hallways and chrome elevators, every surface gleaming, sterile, silent. The deeper they went, the colder it felt. Finally, Megan swiped her badge at a steel door marked Confidential, Storage B4. The lock clicked open. Inside was a dimly lit room lined with metal cabinets and cardboard boxes. Dust floated through narrow beams of light. Nathan stood near the back, sleeves rolled up, holding a folder like it was something fragile. You came, he said quietly. Don't look so surprised, Clara replied. You asked for 1 day. He gestured toward the table. Then let's not waste it. He spread several files across the surface. They were old, yellowed pages, faded ink, technical drawings. Phoenix Core, he said. Your mother's creation. It was the foundation for everything Sterling Industries became. Clara ran her fingers over the blueprints, tracing the name M. Hale printed in neat type. Her heart thudded. So this is real. It's always been real, Nathan said. But when the investors realized how powerful it was, they wanted to weaponize it. I fought them at first, but I was young, and they threatened to shut everything down. I thought if I cut her out, I could protect her. Clara looked up. And instead, you destroyed her. He didn't deny it. I know. She flipped through the pages until one caught her eye, a photograph tucked between the files. It showed a young woman in a lab coat, smiling at the camera, her arm around a younger Nathan Sterling. They stood in front of a chalkboard, filled with equations and sketches. The ring gleamed on her hand. Clara's throat tightened. That's my mom. Nathan stared at the photo for a long moment before saying, She was brilliant, braver than anyone I've ever met. Clara felt a strange ache, anger mixed with pity. You loved her, he nodded slowly. I did, and I failed her. She looked around the room, at the stacks of forgotten files. Why keep all this? Because I couldn't throw her away, he said simply. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could reply, Megan's voice cut through the silence. Sir, we have a problem. Nathan turned. What kind of problem? Julia Voss, Megan said, stepping closer. She's gone to the press. She leaked your fake engagement contract, and she mentioned a mystery waitress at the center of it. Clara froze. She what? Nathan's expression darkened. Of course she did. Megan continued. It's already trending. They're saying you staged the engagement to hide a corporate scandal, that you're being blackmailed. By me, Clara said, realizing. Nathan cursed under his breath. She's trying to ruin both of us. Clara stepped back from the table. I shouldn't have come here. Now it looks like I'm part of this mess. Clara. No, she said sharply. You wanted one day. You got it. I've seen the files. That's enough. She turned to leave, but Nathan caught her wrist, gently, not forcefully. Please, don't walk away. Julia's not just angry. She's dangerous. If she goes public with the wrong details, your mother's work could vanish for good. Clara looked at him, torn between fury and fear. Then fix it, Nathan, because I'm done being collateral damage in your story. She pulled free and walked out, the steel door slamming shut behind her. Nathan stood there for a long moment, staring at the photograph still on the table. Marianne's smile seemed to mock him. He whispered under his breath, I'll fix it, Murray. I swear I will. Outside, Clara stepped into the sunlight, but it didn't feel warm. Her phone buzzed. A headline flashed across the screen. Sterling's secret scandal. Waitress caught in billion-dollar lie. Her stomach dropped, and for the first time, she realized she wasn't just uncovering her mother's past. She was trapped inside it. The day the story broke, the world tilted. Clara woke to the shrill buzz of her phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. At first, she thought it was her alarm. Then she saw the screen. Dozens of missed calls, unread messages, and a flood of notifications. When she opened one, her breath caught. Her face, grainy and stolen from a security camera at the Gilded Swan, stared back from a news article. Who is the waitress in Sterling's secret? Sources claim affair, blackmail, and hidden past. She nearly dropped the phone. The headline bled across every social feed she had. Twitter, TikTok, business blogs, gossip pages. It was everywhere. The phone rang again, her manager at the restaurant. Clara, don't come in today, he said, his tone clipped. Corporate's freaking out. We're being hounded by reporters. They say you're mixed up in something with Nathan Sterling. That's not true, she said, pacing the small living room. I don't care if it's true. They'll bury us if we don't cut ties. You're suspended until further notice. Click. The call ended, leaving her in silence, except for the faint wheeze of her mother's oxygen machine from the next room. Marianne shuffled out, pale and frail in her robe. Clara, what's going on? People keep calling. The news. Clara swallowed hard. Don't worry about it, Mom. It's just work drama. Her mother looked at her with tired, knowing eyes. Work drama doesn't make the news. Before Clara could answer, there was a knock at the door, hard, insistent. She peeked through the peephole and saw two men in suits holding cameras. Paparazzi. Miss Hale! Miss Hale! Are you Nathan Sterling's mistress? Did he pay you to stay quiet? She froze. Oh my God! Marianne gripped her arm. Don't open it. Clara backed away as they kept knocking, shouting questions. She turned up the TV to drown them out, but the sound only made it worse. Nathan's face filled the screen, captured, leaving his office surrounded by reporters. Mr. Sterling, is it true you fabricated your engagement to Julia Voss? Who is Clara Hale, and what is her connection to your late research partner? He didn't answer. He just got into the car, his expression carved from stone. Clara felt sick. They're dragging my name through mud to get to him. Her mother coughed, voice trembling. He'll fix it. He has to. Clara wasn't so sure. Hours later, her phone buzzed again, a blocked number. She almost didn't answer, but something in her gut told her to. Clara, Nathan's voice said. It was quiet, tense. Are you safe? She laughed bitterly. Safe? Reporters are outside my building. I lost my job, and half the internet thinks I'm sleeping with you. So no, Nathan, I'm not exactly safe. He exhaled sharply. Julia leaked everything. But the documents you found, they're real. If we don't act fast, the company will bury them permanently. They've already started deleting the Phoenix core files from the system. Why should I care? She snapped. You started this. I'm trying to end it, he said. Meet me tonight, 8 o'clock. I'll prove what I told you. Clara hesitated. Where? The old Sterling research facility, the one your mother worked in. Her throat tightened. You're insane if you think I'm walking into that. Clara, he said, voice low, almost pleading. You wanted the truth. It's there. After tonight, you'll understand everything. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, torn between fear and fury. Marianne, who had heard enough to guess, whispered, If you go, be careful. The truth has teeth, honey. It bites. Clara pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching reporters still lingering on the street below. Her life had been ordinary just days ago, a blur of coffee orders and rent worries. Now it was headlines and secrets and men who built empires out of lies. And somewhere in the middle of it all was a file with her mother's name on it, proof that might destroy or redeem them both. She picked up her coat. Whatever waited inside that old lab, she needed to see it for herself. The road out to the old Sterling research facility cut through the edge of the city, where skyscrapers gave way to rust and silence. Clara drove her mother's aging Corolla with both hands locked on the wheel, headlights slicing through fog thick as milk. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. She couldn't. By the time she reached the gate, night had swallowed everything but the faint glow of the security lights. The sign was faded, the letters barely visible. Sterling Energy Research Division. Closed. The gate was unlocked. That alone made her hesitate. He said 8, she muttered, glancing at the clock. 7:58. As if summoned by her words, a black sedan pulled up behind her. Nathan stepped out, his coat collar turned up against the cold. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man running out of time. You came, he said. I must be insane, she replied, crossing her arms. You sure this isn't a setup? He shook his head. If I wanted to hurt you, I'd have done it already. Comforting, she said dryly. He keyed the door panel. The old metal gates groaned open, revealing a vast, dark space that smelled of dust and chemicals. The sound of their footsteps echoed as they entered. This place was the heart of everything, Nathan said. Your mother worked here until the day it all fell apart. He flipped a switch. Fluorescent lights buzzed to life, illuminating rows of abandoned workstations covered in dust and forgotten notes. On the far wall hung a whiteboard filled with formulas half erased by time. Clara walked slowly between the desks, fingers brushing the edges. Feels like a tomb. In a way, it is, he said quietly, for both of us. At the center of the room stood a large, sealed cabinet. Nathan entered a code, and the door clicked open. Inside was a sleek metal case. He opened it and slid a file toward her. "These are the original Phoenix Core schematics. Every draft, every experiment log, all signed by Marianne Hale." Clara stared at the papers, her heart hammering. Her mother's handwriting covered every margin, small notes and formulas, little doodles of vines and leaves, the same pattern etched into the ring. "She did all this," Clara whispered. Nathan nodded. "And it should have made her a legend. So why didn't it? Because the board wanted ownership. When she refused, they manufactured evidence against her. Said she leaked data to competitors. I didn't know until it was too late. I thought protecting the company would protect her. Instead, it buried her." Clara's voice trembled. "You could have told the truth. You could have fought for her." He looked at her, eyes heavy with guilt. "And lost everything. Back then I was too proud to fall." She clenched her fists. "And now, you're still protecting yourself." "Not anymore," he said. "That's why we're here." He pulled out a small flash drive. "This is everything the board doesn't want seen. Proof your mother created Phoenix Core, and that they stole it. I'm giving it to you." Clara stared at him. "Why me?" "Because I can't be the one to release it," he said. "If I go public, they'll spin it as corporate infighting. But you, her daughter, you can make them listen." Before she could respond, a sharp clatter echoed from the far side of the room. Both turned toward the sound. Nathan's expression hardened. "We're not alone." A voice rang out, smooth and venomous. "How touching." Julia Voss stepped out of the shadows, her heels clicking against the concrete, a phone in one hand, a mocking smile on her lips. "Guess what, sweetheart?" she said. "You're both trending again." Clara's stomach dropped. "Julia, what are you doing here?" "Oh, don't worry," Julia said sweetly. "I just came to film the happy reunion. The fallen billionaire and the waitress with mummy issues. America's new favorite scandal." Nathan's voice turned cold. "Leave, Julia." "Not before I get my headline," she said, raising her phone camera. But Clara had already stepped forward, anger replacing fear. "Turn that off, now," Julia smirked. "Or what?" Nathan moved between them, his voice sharp. "You don't know what you're playing with. Walk away, Julia." Her eyes glinted with cruelty. "Too late for that, darling. You made me your story. I'm just rewriting the ending." She turned and walked out, her laughter echoing down the hallway. Nathan exhaled shakily. She's going to leak everything. Again. Clara looked at the flash drive in her hand, the weight of it burning through her palm. "Then we leak the truth first," she said. For the first time, Nathan almost smiled. "You really are your mother's daughter." And somewhere beyond those WASP lab walls, the world was waiting for the fire they were about to start. The city never really slept, but that night it felt like it held its breath. Rain hammered the streets, traffic lights bled red across slick asphalt, and the Gilded Swan shimmered like an island of gold in the storm. It was supposed to be a charity dinner for Sterling Industries, a PR stunt to patch the bleeding headlines. Every major investor was there, along with half the city's elite. Clara shouldn't have been anywhere near it. But fate, or bad luck, had a cruel sense of humor. She'd been called in that morning by her manager, who said, "One last shift, Hale. Just stay quiet. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact." She almost said no. But she needed the money, and besides, part of her wanted to look Nathan Sterling in the eye one last time. When she arrived, the restaurant glowed with chandeliers and tension. Every table was dressed in white linen and silent judgment. Waiters moved like clockwork. Cameras flashed at the entrance as Nathan and Julia arrived, still playing their perfect couple, though the smiles didn't reach their eyes. Clara kept her head down, weaving between tables with a tray of champagne flutes. Her stomach was in knots. She knew the flash drive Nathan had given her could change everything. But not yet. Tonight wasn't about proof. It was about survival. Across the room, Nathan looked like a ghost in a tuxedo. His expression was composed, but his eyes searched the crowd until they landed on her. For a moment, he froze. Then quietly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Julia noticed. "What are you looking at?" she whispered, her tone sugar dipped in venom. "Nothing," he said. "Liar," she hissed, her smile never breaking as a photographer snapped their picture. "You've been off since that night. Tell me, Nathan, do I need to worry about your little waitress?" "Drop it," he muttered. But Julia never dropped anything that made her feel small. Halfway through the dinner, the lights flickered from the storm outside. Guests murmured, waiters steadied trays. Clara was delivering wine to a corner table when she heard Julia's voice rise above the music. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julia called, tapping her glass, "I just want to toast the man of the hour, Nathan Sterling." Nathan stiffened. The crowd clapped politely. Julia's grin sharpened. "And to the woman who inspired his latest act of philanthropy. You see, Nathan's been reconnecting with his past lately. Some of you may have read about it." A ripple of whispers spread. Nathan's expression turned to ice. "Julia," he warned. She ignored him. "It's such a touching story, isn't it? A billionaire, a waitress, a tragic mother. It's practically Shakespeare. Except this time, the waitress comes with evidence." Clara froze, the tray trembling in her hands. Every eye turned toward her. Nathan stood abruptly. "That's enough." Julia's voice rose, feeding on the attention. "Tell them, Nathan. Tell them who she really is. Or should I?" The restaurant fell silent, except for the hiss of rain against glass. Nathan's voice came low and calm. "Her name is Clara Hale. She's the daughter of Marianne Hale, the woman who built the foundation of this company. And yes, she deserves the credit I stole from her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Julia's smirk faltered. Clara set the tray down, heart pounding. He'd said it, out loud, in front of the entire city's elite. "She's lying," Julia snapped. "You're both lying. This is damage control, nothing more." Nathan ignored her. He looked at Clara, his voice soft but steady. "You wanted the truth? There it is." For a second, Clara couldn't breathe. Then she stepped forward, pulling the flash drive from her pocket. "And here's the proof." Julia's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Clara held it up. "Every file, every signature, every page my mother wrote before you erased her." The room erupted in chaos. Cameras flashing, phones recording, investors whispering furiously. Julia's face drained of color. Nathan turned to Clara, something like peace flickering across his face. "You just burned the house down." Clara met his gaze. "Then let it burn." Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the restaurant's glass walls. Inside, the empire of Sterling Industries began to crack, right there under the glow of crystal chandeliers and a waitress who finally refused to stay invisible. And as the rain poured harder, everyone knew. The truth wasn't buried anymore. It was alive. And it was roaring. The chaos from the dinner lingered long after the last flashbulb faded. Overnight, Sterling Industries became the story of the year. News anchors spoke the name Marianne Hale like a ghost resurrected. Investors panicked. Julia vanished. And Nathan? Nathan didn't sleep. He sat alone in his penthouse, city lights flickering across the glass, the flash drive clutched in his hand. The file had done more than expose corruption. It had torn open 20 years of denial. When he finally closed his eyes, memory pulled him under. He was young again. 29. Standing in the same research lab he'd shown Clara. The year was 2002, and the air smelled of ozone and ambition. Marianne Hale stood across from him, her brown hair tied in a loose knot, chalk dust on her hands. "We did it," she said, smiling at the glowing cylinder on the table. "The prototype's stable." Nathan couldn't help smiling back. "You just rewrote energy theory, Mari." Mari. Only he called her that. She looked at him, eyes bright with belief. "No, we did. Phoenix Core belongs to both of us." He hesitated. That word, both, was already dangerous. The board didn't like shared credit. The company might see it differently, he said carefully. Her smile dimmed. I don't care what the company sees. We built something that could power cities without pollution. You said this was about changing the world, not owning it. He took her hands. It still is. She squeezed them. Then promise me, Nathan. Promise me you'll never let them use it for profit or control. I promise, he said, and meant it. But promises were fragile things. A week later, the investors descended, cold men in suits, led by Raymond Shaw, the board chairman. They wanted patents, military contracts, control. Raymond slammed a folder on Nathan's desk. She's idealistic. You're not. That's why we need you at the helm. She's my partner, Nathan argued. You can't cut her out. Raymond leaned forward, voice low. She's a liability. Do you want to build an empire or babysit a dreamer? Nathan didn't answer. That night, security escorted Marianne out of the building under false charges of data theft. She never looked back. He'd tried to find her once. He went to her apartment, but it was empty. Just a ring on the table and a note that said, "You chose them. I hope it was worth it." It wasn't. Nathan jerked awake, the memory still burning behind his eyes. The ring, the one he'd kept locked in his safe for years, still sat in his drawer, twin to the one Julia had worn. He opened it, staring at the tiny engraving. To promise better days. His phone buzzed. Megan's voice was tight on the other end. The board called an emergency meeting. They're voting to remove you as CEO. He sighed. Let them. Nathan, I said let them. I've spent half my life protecting a lie. Maybe it's time to pay for it. There was a long silence. Then softly, Megan said, Clara's mother was right about you. You were good once. He hung up. Across town, Clara sat at her mother's bedside, watching her breathe. The news was everywhere. Nathan Sterling confessing, the company in crisis, investors bailing. Her mother stirred, eyes fluttering open. Clara? Hey, she said gently. It's over. They know the truth now. Marianne smiled faintly. He did it, didn't he? Clara hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, he did. Her mother's hand trembled as it reached for hers. He wasn't all bad, you know, just afraid. Clara looked at her mother, the woman who had been erased, who'd lived in silence for decades, and felt something shift. Maybe anger wasn't the whole story anymore. Maybe redemption didn't erase the past, but it could rewrite the ending. Outside the hospital window, the first sunlight broke through the storm, and for the first time in 20 years, Marianne Hale's name finally belonged to her again. By Monday morning, the city had turned Nathan Sterling's fall into theatre. News vans crowded outside Sterling Tower. Anchors called it the downfall of a titan. Every network replayed the dinner confrontation, zooming in on Clara's face, the flash drive glinting in her hand. Inside the tower, Nathan sat alone in the boardroom that once felt like his kingdom. The long glass table reflected his hollow eyes. Outside, his name was being stripped from the walls. Sterling Industries was already drafting statements about leadership transitions. Megan entered quietly, setting a mug of coffee beside him. They're waiting for you. He didn't move. How bad is it? She hesitated. The board will remove you. The SEC's investigating, and Julia's interview goes live at noon. Nathan gave a dry laugh. Perfect timing. Megan looked at him for a long moment. You could fight this, you know. Lawyers, PR. Spin the story. He shook his head. No. For once in my life, I'm done spinning. She left him there, and for a few minutes he listened to the hum of the city far below. Then he reached for his phone and dialed a number he'd memorized but never dared to use. Clara answered on the second ring. What do you want, Nathan? 5 minutes, he said. That's all. Meet me at Pier 45. I don't owe you anything. No, he said softly, but I owe you everything. She almost hung up. Almost, but something in his voice, the exhaustion, the quiet plea, made her stay silent for a moment too long. 5 minutes, she said finally. And that's it. An hour later, the Hudson wind whipped at her hair as she spotted him standing at the edge of the pier, coat unbuttoned, tie gone. The man who once ruled boardrooms looked small against the grey water. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. Neither was I, she replied. Nathan studied the skyline for a moment before speaking. You know, when I built this company, I told myself I was doing it for progress, for people, but it was always for me. For the boy who grew up believing power could erase regret. Clara folded her arms. And did it? He smiled sadly. No, it just buried it deeper. She said nothing. The waves slapped against the pier, rhythmic and cold. I saw your mother once, he said quietly, after she left the company. She was in a cafe downtown, sketching on napkins. I wanted to go to her, tell her I was sorry, but she looked free. So I turned around and walked away. Clara's chest tightened. She wasn't free. She was surviving. Nathan nodded, and I was too much of a coward to help her. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was the original ring, the one he'd given Marianne decades ago. This belonged to her before it belonged to me. I think it's yours now. Clara stared at it, her throat closing. I don't want anything from you. I know, he said, but I need you to take it anyway. Because everything I've done since that day, the company, the money, the lies, it all started with that promise. Maybe if you hold it, it'll mean something again. She took the ring, not out of forgiveness, but because refusing it felt like holding on to anger she didn't have strength for anymore. Nathan turned toward the water. They'll drag me through hell after today, and maybe I deserve it. But at least now, your mother's name will stand beside mine in every record I can touch. Clara's eyes burned. That's not redemption, Nathan. That's just truth catching up. He nodded. Then maybe that's enough. For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the fallen billionaire and the daughter of the woman he betrayed, two people bound by guilt, grief, and the faintest flicker of grace. As she walked away, Nathan called after her. Clara. She stopped but didn't turn. Tell her, he said softly. Tell your mother I'm sorry. Clara didn't answer, but she slipped the ring into her pocket, feeling its weight like the final punctuation at the end of a long, painful sentence. Behind her, the wind carried Nathan's whisper away into the grey water, scattering it like ashes. And for the first time, silence didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like closure. By noon the next day, every news channel had one name plastered across their banners. Julia Voss. The fallen fiancée had gone from red carpet darling to whistleblower overnight, and she was milking it for every headline she could get. Her face filled the TV screens across Manhattan, eyes glassy, makeup smudged just enough to look tragic. I never wanted to lie, she told the morning talk show host, her voice trembling. Nathan Sterling manipulated me. He promised a future, but all he wanted was control. Then came the dagger. And the woman he's protecting now, the waitress, she's not innocent either. She was part of it. She helped cover up his crimes. Clara nearly dropped her coffee when she saw it. Her phone exploded with messages, accusations, threats, strangers calling her a fraud, gold digger, liar, snake. The internet loved a villain, and Julia had just handed them one wrapped in an apron. By evening, reporters had found her apartment again, microphones jammed at the door, flashes bursting through the window blinds. Clara Hale, did Nathan Sterling pay you off? Were you his accomplice or his lover? She slammed the blinds shut and sank to the floor, hands shaking. Her mother's voice came weakly from the bedroom. Baby, what's happening? Nothing, Mum. Just noise, Clara said, forcing calm. But her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Then her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. They're not done. Meet me tonight. Old lab, 9 p.m., bring the files. N. She hesitated, dread curling in her stomach. After everything that had happened, she wasn't sure she could trust him anymore. But the message didn't sound like a trap. It sounded like desperation. By the time she reached the facility, rain had started again. The place looked emptier than before, stripped of even the ghosts. Nathan was there, standing near the center of the lab, the flickering lights carving tired shadows across his face. "She's gone too far," he said as soon as Clara stepped inside. "Julia sold fake documents to the press, altered versions of the Phoenix Core files. She's trying to destroy the originals before the government sees them." Clara frowned. Why would she do that? "She wants revenge," Nathan said, "and she thinks taking you down will finish me for good." She crossed her arms. "You made her that angry." "I know," he admitted, "but this isn't about her anymore. This is about your mother's work. Julia has connections. She's already leaked to competitors who'd love to patent Phoenix Core under new names." Clara's pulse quickened. "So what do we do?" Nathan looked at her with a mix of exhaustion and resolve. "We go public before she does. Full transparency. We release the real documents to the Federal Archive. Everything." She hesitated. "That'll ruin you completely." He smiled faintly. "Then it's fair." Before she could respond, a sharp crash echoed from the hall. Both turned. Julia Voss appeared in the doorway, dripping from the rain, eyes wild. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. In her hand was a phone recording every word. "You really think you can outplay me?" she said, voice trembling with rage. "You used me, Nathan. You made me your lie. You're your prop, and now you want to play hero." "Julia, stop," he said, taking a cautious step forward. "Don't move," she snapped. "You think you're going to walk away clean? No, I'm taking you both down." Her voice cracked as she turned the phone toward Clara. "You're just like him, pretending to be some poor, innocent girl when you're standing on stolen gold." Clara took a steady breath. "You don't get it, Julia. You were never the villain in his story. You made yourself one in mine." Julia's expression faltered, just for a second, then hardened again. "You'll regret that." She spun on her heel and stormed out into the rain, her footsteps echoing down the hall. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan turned to Clara. "She's unstable. If she leaks any more of those fake files, it could bury the truth forever." Clara nodded slowly. "Then we stop her before she does." Nathan exhaled. "We're out of time." Lightning flashed through the broken windows, splitting the room in white light. And in that instant, Clara realized the war her mother escaped 20 years ago was starting again, only this time, she was the one standing in the crossfire. The next morning, the world turned ruthless. Julia's doctored story dominated every network, her version of events painting Clara as a con artist, and Nathan as a manipulator who had forged documents to reclaim his power. The internet ate it alive. Waitress scams, Billionaire. Sterling's fake confession exposed. Mother-daughter fraud ring. Clara stopped counting the insults. Every time she refreshed her feed, there was a new wave of hate, new strangers dissecting her life like it was a show. By noon, the Gilded Swan fired her officially. The manager left a voicemail too polite to hide the fear. "You've brought too much attention. We can't have the media here." She didn't bother calling back. Her mother tried to reassure her between coughing fits. "They'll see the truth, baby. They always do." But Clara wasn't sure anymore. The truth had teeth, and people only cared about who bled first. Her phone buzzed again. Megan, Nathan's assistant. "Clara, you need to get to Sterling Tower. Now." "Why?" "Nathan's being forced out. The board's selling off the Phoenix Core patents to a weapons contractor. If that happens, your mother's work becomes property of the military by the end of the day." Clara grabbed her coat, heart pounding. "I'm coming." The elevator ride to the top of Sterling Tower felt endless. When the doors opened, chaos reigned. Reporters were shouting outside the glass conference room. Lawyers barked orders. Cameras flashed. Inside, Nathan stood at the head of the long table, surrounded by board members who looked like sharks circling blood. His tie was gone, his voice steady but fierce. "You can't sell Phoenix Core," he said. "That technology wasn't built for war." Raymond Shaw, the same man who'd destroyed Marianne's career decades ago, smiled coldly. "You're no longer in control, Nathan. We're liquidating assets. The shareholders demand it." Nathan slammed his fist against the table. "This company was built on her vision," Shaw sneered, "and now it dies on yours." The doors burst open. Clara stormed in, soaking from the rain, eyes blazing. "You don't have that right." Every head turned. Shaw frowned. "Security." "No," Nathan said sharply. "She has more right to be here than any of you." Clara walked to the table and dropped a folder in front of Shaw. "That's a federal injunction," she said. "Filed this morning by the Department of Energy's Ethics Division. You can't sell stolen technology." Shaw's smirk faltered. "How did you—" "I sent the proof," she said, cutting him off. "The real proof. My mother's files, signatures, everything. The Phoenix Core belongs to her estate, and now, legally, to me." A stunned silence fell. Nathan stared at her, pride flickering behind exhaustion. Shaw's voice dropped to a growl. "You think you can waltz in here, and—" "I don't think," Clara said. "I know." Murmurs spread across the table. One board member whispered, "If that's true, we can't touch the patents." Shaw turned on Nathan. "You put her up to this." Nathan shook his head. "She did it on her own." Clara looked directly at him. "This isn't about saving you. It's about saving her legacy." Security entered the room, confused, waiting for instruction. But Shaw's authority had cracked. He snatched up the papers, flipping through them, his face darkening with every page. Finally, he snapped, "Get her out of here." Before anyone could move, Nathan stepped between them. "Touch her, and I'll destroy every backup this company has left." The guards hesitated. The boardroom fell still. Clara held Nathan's gaze. "It's over." He gave a faint nod. "Almost." Suddenly, Megan rushed in from the hallway, phone in hand. "It's Julia," she gasped. "She's live streaming from the lab. She says she has the original Phoenix Core drive, and she's going to expose the final truth." Nathan's face went pale. "That's not a threat. That's a disaster. If she opens that drive, she could trigger the unstable prototype." Clara's blood ran cold. "You mean explode?" He looked at her grimly. "Yes." The rain outside turned into thunder. Nathan grabbed his coat. "We have to stop her." Clara followed him toward the elevators. "Then let's finish what she started." As the doors closed behind them, lightning illuminated the skyline. Sharp, white, final. And for the first time, Clara understood that her mother's legacy wasn't just about truth anymore. It was about survival. The storm had turned violent by the time Clara and Nathan reached the outskirts of the city. Rain came down in sheets, lightning cutting the sky into pieces. The wipers on Nathan's black sedan fought to keep up, the road ahead a blur of wet asphalt and headlights. "She said she has the original drive," Clara said, gripping the dashboard. "Can it really explode?" Nathan's eyes stayed fixed on the road. "The Phoenix Core prototype wasn't stable. It needed containment shielding we never finished. If she tries to power it, even for a demo, it could detonate." "Detonate? Like level half a city block?" Clara's stomach dropped. "She thinks she's exposing you. She doesn't know." "She's angry enough not to care," he muttered. They sped past the empty industrial district, the facility looming ahead like a dark skeleton against the lightning flashes. Nathan killed the headlights as they turned into the lot. "If she's live streaming, she won't be alone. Press might already be here." Clara's heart thudded. "Then we'd better hurry." They slipped inside through the side door Nathan had used before. The air inside was damp and heavy, the hum of distant machinery echoing through the empty halls. Somewhere ahead, a woman's voice carried faintly. "Julia." "She's in the reactor room," Nathan whispered. The glow of cell phone lights flickered down the corridor. A few journalists were already there, whispering excitedly into cameras. Julia stood at the center of the lab, soaked from the rain, her hair plastered to her face. In front of her sat a large metal cylinder on a work table, the Phoenix core prototype, dormant but humming faintly. A small red light blinked on its side. Julia's voice trembled but carried authority. "They lied to you. Sterling Industries isn't about energy. It's about control. This," she tapped the cylinder, "is proof." Nathan stepped forward. "Julia, stop. You don't know what you're doing." The journalists turned, startled. Cameras swung toward him. Julia's eyes lit up with fury. "Perfect. The man himself. Tell them, Nathan. Tell them how you built your empire on a lie." "I am telling them," he said calmly. "That's why I confessed. But if you activate that device, none of this will matter." She laughed, sharp and desperate. "You think I'm stupid? It's just a battery." Nathan shook his head. "No, it's a reactor. You touch the sequence, and it'll chain react." Clara edged closer, trying to see the display. The red light was pulsing faster. "Julia, he's right. Look at it. It's heating up." Julia hesitated, her expression flickering between defiance and fear. "You're lying. Both of you." Nathan took a slow step forward. "Julia, listen to me. I was wrong to use you. I was wrong about everything, but this isn't the way to end it. You'll kill yourself, and everyone here." She blinked, confused. "You're just trying to scare me." Then the device beeped, a low, rising tone. The sound made every muscle in Clara's body tense. Nathan's voice turned urgent. "That's the ignition cycle starting. Julia, hand me the drive. Now!" But Julia stepped back, clutching it to her chest. "No, they'll bury me again." "Julia," Clara shouted, "you don't have to prove anything. You already showed the world who he was. But if you do this, you'll prove nothing but tragedy." Julia's hand trembled. "I just wanted them to see me." Clara moved closer, gently. "Then let me see you, okay? You've been used by him, by them, by the press. Don't let this thing be the last story they tell about you." The light on the reactor shifted from red to amber. Nathan lunged, grabbing the device's panel. "It's overheating. Clara, pull the main cable." She dropped to her knees and yanked at a thick black cord snaking along the floor. Sparks flew, the air filling with ozone. The lights flickered, and for a terrifying second the world went white. Then silence. The hum stopped. Clara gasped, chest heaving. The reactor was dark. Julia fell to her knees, sobbing. "I didn't mean—" Nathan crouched beside the reactor, checking the readings. "It's stable. We shut it down." Reporters filmed from the doorway, whispering in shock. Clara looked up, soaked and shaking, as Nathan met her eyes. "You saved us," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, we saved what she built." Julia wept quietly in the corner, the camera lights glinting off her tears. Nathan looked around the room, the same lab where his empire began, and where it almost ended. "It's done," he said, voice rough. "No more lies." Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time it sounded like release. And as Clara stood amid the wreckage, she realized her mother's legacy had survived not through him, not through fame, but through her. Morning came grey and heavy, the kind of light that made the whole city look hungover from the night before. The news had already spread, the lab explosion that didn't happen. Every outlet wanted the footage, the interviews, the drama. Julia's breakdown was trending, but what mattered more was what Clara held in her hands. The Phoenix core, cold and silent, and the real truth behind it. By noon, Sterling Tower looked like a fortress under siege. Reporters filled the lobby, camera crews swarming every exit. The board of directors had called an emergency shareholders meeting, demanding to know what was true, what was fake, and who still held the keys to the company's future. Clara stepped out of the elevator on the 60th floor, wearing her mother's silver ring around her neck. The flash drive Nathan had given her was tucked inside her jacket. Megan met her at the hallway with an expression that was equal parts exhaustion and relief. "You sure about this?" Megan asked. Clara nodded. "If I walk away now, they rewrite the story again. I'm not letting that happen." The boardroom doors opened. The air inside was sharp with tension and expensive cologne. Rows of executives turned toward her like she was a ghost they didn't believe in. At the head of the table sat Raymond Shaw, still as venomous as ever. "Well," Shaw said, voice smooth as oil, "if it isn't our waitress turned whistleblower, I assume you're here to finish burning the building down." Clara didn't flinch. "No. I'm here to rebuild what you destroyed." Nathan sat at the far end, flanked by security. His title was gone, his name tarnished, but when he saw her walk in, something like hope flickered across his face. Shaw leaned back, smirking. "You have 5 minutes, Miss Hale. Convince us that you're not just another opportunist chasing a headline." Clara stepped forward, placing the flash drive on the table. "This isn't about headlines. This is proof, unedited, unaltered. It's everything my mother created before you erased her." The screen behind them came alive as she connected the drive. Documents, blueprints, signatures, all bearing the name Marianne Hale. "Your company built its empire on these," Clara said, her voice steady. "Every product, every patent, every dollar started here. You took her name off it because she wouldn't let you weaponize it." Shaw's face tightened. "Allegations. Nothing more." Nathan stood. "They're not allegations. I was there." Gasps rippled through the room. He met their stares, unflinching. "I signed the deal that exiled her. I let you use her as a scapegoat, and I've spent 20 years hiding from it. But it ends today. Transfer the patents to her estate or to her daughter, or I'll testify to every illegal contract this board has ever approved." The silence that followed was absolute. Shaw's smug composure cracked. "You'd destroy your own company?" Nathan's voice dropped to a calm, dangerous whisper. "It was never mine to keep." Megan handed a folder across the table. "The government already has copies of the files. If you don't comply, the investigation will go public. We all know what that means." The board members shifted uneasily. Lawyers murmured among themselves. Shaw stared at Clara, his jaw clenching. "You think you've won?" She met his gaze. "No. I think she finally did." Nathan looked at Clara with something close to peace. "You should be the one to sign it." She hesitated, then took the pen he offered. Her hand shook only once as she signed her name beside her mother's. Clara Hale, on behalf of Marianne Hale. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then genuine. Cameras flashed as the press was ushered in, capturing the moment that would make headlines for all the right reasons this time. Shaw stood and stormed out, his empire crumbling behind him. Nathan exhaled slowly, shoulders sagging as if he'd finally dropped a weight he'd carried half his life. Megan turned to Clara. "What now?" Clara smiled faintly. "Now, we give it back to the people it was meant for." Outside the tower, the clouds finally began to break apart, sunlight and streaking through like forgiveness. As the cameras clicked, Nathan whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "Your mother would have been proud." Clara looked at the city sprawling below, the one her mother had dreamed of lighting with clean energy, and felt tears sting her eyes. "She still is," she said softly. And for the first time, the empire built on lies finally stood in the light of truth. The following week felt like an aftershock. Sterling Industries fractured under the weight of its own truth. News outlets replayed the footage of Clara signing the restitution contract, while investors scrambled to distance themselves from decades of deception. For once, the world was saying her mother's name, not as a footnote, but as a founder. But redemption came with a cost. The company's stock plummeted, lawsuits surfaced, executives resigned. And Nathan Sterling, once the untouchable billionaire, was now facing federal hearings, public humiliation, and the slow unraveling of everything he'd built. He didn't hide from it. The morning he stepped out of Sterling Tower for the last time, he refused the armored limousine waiting at the curb. Instead, he walked. Cameras followed him down Fifth Avenue, flashes exploding like lightning. Questions were hurled from every direction. But, Sterling, are you resigning permanently? Do you regret your relationship with the Hale family? Is it true you're cooperating with investigators? He didn't answer a single one. The only thing he said, just before disappearing into the crowd, was, the truth was overdue. That same morning, Clara was sitting at her mother's bedside in St. Jude's Hospital. Marianne had been watching the news coverage from a small TV, her frail hands trembling as Nathan's image flickered across the screen. Looks like he finally kept a promise, Marianne murmured. Clara adjusted her blanket. He's doing the right thing, Mum. Maybe late, but he's doing it. Marianne smiled faintly. That's all any of us can do in the end. Fix what we broke. But Clara could see how tired she looked. The stress, the publicity, the years of silence. It had all taken its toll. The machines around her hummed softly, their steady rhythm the only reassurance that she was still there. Later that afternoon, Clara stepped out to grab coffee. When she returned, the nurses were rushing in and out of the room. Her heart dropped. What happened? One nurse turned, her face pale. Her heart rate spiked. She's slipping. Clara dropped the cup and ran to her mother's side. Mum, stay with me. Please. Marianne's eyes fluttered open. Don't cry, baby. You've already won. You gave me back my name. Tears blurred Clara's vision. That's not enough. I need you. Her mother smiled weakly. You don't need me anymore. You've got her strength. And his courage. Mum. But her words dissolved into silence. The monitors flatlined. Clara's cry broke through the sterile air, raw and helpless. Nurses moved around her, but she couldn't hear them. The world blurred into static. Hours later, when the chaos faded and the body was gone, she sat alone in the quiet hospital room, her mother's ring clenched in her palm. The door creaked open. Nathan stood there, rain-soaked, exhausted, his eyes rimmed red. I saw the news, he said softly. I came as soon as I could. Clara didn't look at him. You're too late. She's gone. He took a step closer. Clara, Don't, she said sharply. You don't get to say you're sorry again. You already said it once, and it cost her 20 years. Nathan's voice cracked. Then let me make the next 20 mean something. She finally looked at him. How? He reached into his coat and handed her a folder. Inside was a document bearing the seal of the Department of Energy. I turned over full ownership of the Phoenix Core patents to your mother's trust, he said. It's hers, yours completely, and the royalties go straight to the Marianne Hale Foundation. It'll fund scholarships for women in science. Clara blinked through tears. You did that? He nodded. She deserved it. You both do. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the window, like the world itself was grieving with them. Then quietly, Clara whispered, She'd forgive you for this. Nathan's gaze softened. I don't need her forgiveness. I just wanted her peace. Clara looked out at the skyline, her mother's ring warm against her skin. Somewhere beneath the sorrow, she felt it, the faint flicker of healing. And in that silence, the billionaire and the waitress finally stopped running from the past and started carrying it forward instead. The world moved fast, but grief didn't. Weeks passed after Marianne's funeral, yet to Clara, time felt stuck in a strange limbo between quiet and chaos. The press had finally begun to move on. Headlines shifted from scandal to sympathy, calling Marianne Hale the mother of clean energy, a pioneer lost too soon. But for Clara, the noise outside meant nothing. She was still waking up in the middle of the night, expecting to hear her mother humming softly from the kitchen. One morning, she found herself at the kitchen table, the silver ring resting beside a stack of unopened letters. The apartment was too quiet. The world, somehow, too large. A knock at the door broke the silence. She opened it to find Nathan standing there, not in a tailored suit this time, but in a plain grey coat holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look tired," he said gently. "I am tired," she replied. "And you shouldn't be here. People still hate you, remember?" He offered a faint smile. "They're getting used to it." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment looked smaller than he remembered, humble, but warm. Family photos on the shelf, a blanket folded neatly on the couch. It smelled faintly of vanilla and old books. He set the coffee down and glanced at the boxes in the corner. "You're packing?" "I'm moving out next week," Clara said. "The foundation offered me an apartment near the research campus. They want me to help oversee the Phoenix Core relaunch." He nodded. "Your mother would have loved that." Clara looked down. "I hope so." There was a long silence between them, uncomfortable, but honest. Finally, she said, "So what happens to you now?" He exhaled slowly. "Court hearings, settlements, the usual ritual for fallen billionaires. But after that, I'm not sure. I thought I'd volunteer with the foundation, if they'll have me." She studied him for a long moment. "You don't strike me as someone who takes orders well." "I'm learning," he said, smiling slightly. "Humility's an expensive lesson." She almost smiled back. Almost. He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and set it on the table. "This is the final transfer. The trust is fully active. The royalties from Sterling Industries will fund research grants in your mother's name. And there's a second fund. For you." She frowned. "For me?" "To make sure you never have to fight the way she did." Clara pushed it back toward him. "I don't want your money." "It's not mine," he said softly. "It's hers. I just moved it where it always should have been." For a moment, the air between them felt heavy with all the things they couldn't undo. He looked around the small space, the worn furniture, the faded photographs, and then back at her. "I used to think legacy was about buildings, power, stock prices," he said. "But your mother taught me it's about what survives you. You're what survived her, Clara, and that's worth more than anything I ever built." Her throat tightened. "You sound like you're saying goodbye." "Maybe I am," he said. "It's time I step out of her shadow. And yours." She swallowed hard. "Where will you go?" He glanced toward the window. "Somewhere quiet. Maybe teach. Maybe disappear for a while." For the first time, she saw not the billionaire who'd destroyed her mother's life, but the man trying, however clumsily, to make amends. As he turned to leave, she said softly, "Nathan." He stopped at the door. "You don't have to disappear," she said. "You just have to start over." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Maybe we both do." After he left, Clara picked up the envelope and placed it in the drawer beside the ring. Then she sat at the table, watching the light spill through the window like a quiet promise. Outside, the city was alive again, louder, brighter, moving forward. And for the first time in years, so was she. Because Marianne Hale's legacy wasn't a technology, it was the strength she left behind in her daughter. Spring came early that year, as if the city itself was tired of grey skies. The first rays of sun spilled across the new Marianne Hale Research Center, a gleaming glass building on the riverfront that reflected light like hope reborn. Inside, banners hung across the lobby. Grand opening. The future of clean energy begins here. Clara stood near the entrance, clutching a folder of notes, her mother's ring shining faintly on a silver chain around her neck. Reporters buzzed around the room, cameras flashing. But this time, she wasn't the scandal. They were here for the celebration. The foundation had rebuilt Phoenix Core from the original blueprints, stabilizing the technology her mother had once dreamed would power the world. The first unit was already live, supplying clean energy to a hospital in Queens. The plaque beside it read simply, "In memory of Marianne Hale, who believed light belongs to everyone." A gentle voice broke her thoughts. "You ready for your speech?" Clara turned to see Megan, smiling proudly. "Barely," Clara admitted. "Public speaking wasn't in the waitress job description." Megan laughed. "Well, neither was saving the planet." Clara smiled, but her chest felt tight. "She should have been here, Megan. She deserved this moment." "She is here," Megan said softly, touching the ring around Clara's neck. "Every time that thing shines, I swear she's winking at you." When the ceremony began, the crowd quieted. The mayor gave a short introduction, then motioned for Clara to step up to the podium. Applause rose as she approached the microphone, the lights warm on her face. She took a breath. "My mother once said that energy wasn't just power, it was connection. Every spark we share makes the world a little less dark." She believed that even when the world forgot her name. But today, we remember. Not because of me, or Nathan Sterling, or anyone on this stage. We remember because truth survives. It just takes time to find the light. The crowd erupted in applause, the kind that sounded like release. For the first time, Clara felt the weight in her chest lift. After the event, as the guests began to leave, she walked down to the river terrace alone. The city glowed across the water, its skyline humming with the quiet rhythm of a world her mother helped build. A familiar voice behind her said, "You've gotten good at speeches." She turned. Nathan stood a few feet away, dressed simply. No bodyguards, no entourage, just a man carrying a small box in his hand. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. He smiled faintly. "Wouldn't miss it. She deserves a better ending than the one I gave her." He opened the box. Inside lay a ring, her mother's, carefully restored. The metal gleamed, the twin-leaf engraving polished smooth again. "I had it repaired," he said quietly. "It felt wrong sitting in a vault." Clara's eyes burned as she reached out and took it. "Thank you." He hesitated. "I'm leaving tomorrow. The hearings are done. They let me keep one thing. Choice. So I'm choosing to start over somewhere no one knows my name." She nodded slowly. "Then this is goodbye." "Maybe not forever," he said. "Just until we've both built something worth meeting again for." The wind lifted her hair, carrying the sound of the river between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she slipped the ring onto her finger, the metal cool against her skin. "It fits," she whispered. "It always did," he said. Nathan turned to go, his footsteps fading across the terrace. Clara watched him disappear into the crowd, the evening sun catching his silhouette one last time. She looked down at the ring, then at the skyline her mother had dreamed of brightening. The air smelled of rain and renewal. The lights along the river flickered to life, tiny sparks, steady, endless, and for the first time, Clara Hale smiled, not for what she'd lost, but for everything her mother's light had finally become. So that's how the story ends. And if you're still here with me right now, it means something in this story touched your heart, doesn't it? Maybe it's not just about Clara or her mother. It's about all of us. About how truth, no matter how long it's buried, always finds its way to the light. About how forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the quiet kind of strength that frees us. The Stoics used to say, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That's what healing is, learning to let go of what we can't change, and choosing to build something better from what's left. Like Clara, we all have to face the storms of our past to see the sunrise that follows. So take a moment, breathe, and remember, you can't rewrite what happened, but you can rewrite what happens next. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of truth, love, or starting over, then hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a little light today, and subscribe to stay with us for more stories that speak to the heart. Because maybe, just maybe, that's how we keep the light alive, by passing it on.